Everything you know about emotional strength is wrong. You were taught that strong people don't cry. True toughness means swallowing your pain and moving forward. The ability to feel nothing is a form of power. But here's what nobody told you. The emotions you bury don't die. They simply remain dormant. They multiply, they mutate, and they slowly unravel you from the inside out. That tightness in your chest you can't explain. That exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix. That anger that explodes over nothing. That's not a weakness, that's years of repressed emotions finally demanding to be heard. And the cruelest part, the very act of hiding your feelings, is what's making you weaker every single day. Research from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology confirms it. People who habitually suppress emotions have significantly lower resilience to stress. What appears to be strength is actually self-destruction in slow motion. In the next few minutes, I'll show you how repression rewires your brain, damages your relationships, and steals your strength. More importantly, I'll reveal the counterintuitive truth about emotions that most people never discover until it's too late. Think about where you learned to hide your feelings. It didn't happen by accident. When you were young, someone taught you that certain emotions were dangerous. Perhaps a parent said, "Stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about." Perhaps you witnessed your family erupt in anger every time someone expressed it, so you learned that anger was unsafe. Maybe showing sadness made you a target for ridicule, so you built walls, you became the one who keeps it together. Psychology calls this emotional conditioning. Your brain created survival rules. Sadness equals rejection, anger equals punishment, fear equals weakness, and these rules became automatic. You no longer even realize you're following them. Here's what makes this devastating. You weren't born this way. Babies scream when they're upset. They laugh when they're happy. They don't apologize for feeling. Watch any child before they're taught to suppress themselves. They feel everything fully and then move on. No residue, no baggage, just pure emotional flow. But somewhere along the way, you learned that your authentic emotions were problems to be solved, not experiences to be felt. You learned that certain parts of you were acceptable and others needed to be hidden. You split yourself in half, the public you and the real you. And now those childhood rules run your adult life without your permission. The parent who told you to stop crying is no longer in the room, but their voice still echoes in your mind every time you feel tears rising. But let me show you what really happens inside your brain when you repress emotions. Neuroscience reveals something disturbing. When you actively suppress an emotion, your prefrontal cortex works overtime to keep that feeling locked down. Meanwhile, your amygdala, the fear center of your brain, stays hyperactive. It's like your body is experiencing a threat that your mind refuses to acknowledge. The result, you're burning massive amounts of mental energy fighting yourself. Your stress hormones stay elevated. Your nervous system never fully relaxes. You feel exhausted even when you haven't done anything. Think of it like running an intensive program in the background of your computer. You can't see it, but it's constantly draining your battery. That's what repressed emotions do to your energy, your focus, your capacity to handle life. And here's what most people miss. The body keeps score. Your emotions don't just live in your mind. They reside in your muscles, organs, and nervous system. That chronic tension in your shoulders, that's probably anger you never expressed. Those stomach problems that doctors can't explain, that might be anxiety you've been swallowing for years. That heaviness in your chest, that could be grief you never allowed yourself to feel. Those headaches that come out of nowhere, that could be years of suppressed frustration finally manifesting physically. Your body becomes a storage unit for every emotion you refuse to process, and eventually the storage unit overflows. This isn't a metaphor, it's biology. Studies show that chronic emotional suppression is linked to higher rates of heart disease, weakened immune function, and accelerated aging. Your cells are literally listening to your emotional state. When you tell yourself you're fine while your body screams otherwise, you create a silent conflict inside yourself that never stops. Think of repressed emotions like debt. You can ignore the bill today, but the interest compounds. What started as a minor discomfort can become chronic pain. What began as occasional numbness becomes complete disconnection. You're not avoiding the cost, you're just delaying it while it grows larger. I want you to imagine something. Picture yourself holding a beach ball underwater. You can push it down, you can hold it there, you can pretend it doesn't exist, but the pressure builds, your arms get tired, and the moment you lose focus, that ball explodes to the surface with more force than when it went under. That's exactly what repressed emotions do. They don't disappear, they wait, and when they finally surface, they come back stronger, messier, and more overwhelming than if you had just let them flow in the first place. Psychologists call this the return of the repressed. Those buried feelings always find a way out, sometimes through dreams you can't explain, sometimes through words that slip out before you can stop them, sometimes through sudden emotional explosions that seem to come from nowhere. You've experienced this. You know what it's like to snap at someone you love over something small. That wasn't about the small thing, that was months or years of unprocessed emotion finally breaking through the surface. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. If repression makes us weak, what actually makes us strong? Most people think there are only two options: repress everything and appear in control, or express everything and seem unstable. But there's a third path that changes everything. It's called emotional integration, and it's the difference between being controlled by your feelings and being empowered by them. Integration doesn't mean suppressing emotions. It doesn't mean exploding with them either. It means allowing your emotions to exist, acknowledging them, learning from them, and letting them pass through you instead of getting stuck inside you. Think of your emotions not as enemies to defeat, but as teachers to listen to. Anger teaches you where your boundaries are being violated. Sadness shows you what truly matters to your heart. Fear reveals where growth is calling you. Loneliness signals where connection is needed. When you listen instead of repress, something profound happens. You gain information, you understand yourself, you make better decisions because you're working with your full self, not just the edited version you show the world. And here's what nobody tells you about your repression. It's not a flaw, it's misdirected survival intelligence. That hypervigilance you developed to sense danger before it arrived, that ability to read a room before anyone speaks, that deep empathy that lets you feel what others feel. These aren't weaknesses, they're superpowers pointing in the wrong direction. The same sensitivity that taught you to hide is what gives you depth others can only dream of. The same awareness that made you cautious is what makes you perceptive to a remarkable degree. You didn't develop these traits because you're broken. You developed them because you're extraordinarily intelligent at survival. The problem isn't your sensitivity. The problem is that you've been using it against yourself instead of for yourself. Here's the psychological truth most people never hear. Emotions have a biological lifespan. When you actually feel an emotion fully, without fighting it or feeding it, most emotions naturally subside within 90 seconds. 90 seconds, that's it. But when you repress them, you stretch 90 seconds into years of quiet suffering. You turn a wave into a permanent flood. So what feels like weakness, crying, admitting fear, expressing frustration, is actually the fastest path to strength. You're not breaking down, you're processing, you're completing the emotional cycle instead of trapping it inside you. Let me share something that might shift your entire perspective. A neuroimaging study found that simply naming one's emotion reduces activity in the amygdala and increases regulation in the prefrontal cortex. In plain language, when you say, "I feel angry" or "I feel scared," your brain literally shifts from panic mode to control mode. You don't just feel better, you become neurologically stronger. Your brain becomes better at handling emotions the more you acknowledge them, rather than hiding them. This is the paradox nobody taught you. Vulnerability is not the opposite of strength, it's the foundation of it. If you're watching this and recognizing yourself, type 1 in the comments if you were taught to hide your emotions as a child. Type 2 if you learned to be the strong one who never complains. I want to know which pattern shaped you. Now let's go deeper, because repressed emotions don't just weaken you internally. They quietly damage every relationship you have. Think about it. A person who has buried their anger struggles to set boundaries. They say yes when they mean no. They let people cross lines because expressing anger feels too dangerous. Resentment builds silently until the relationship collapses. They become martyrs who give everything and secretly hate everyone for taking. Someone who represses sadness can't truly connect with others. Genuine intimacy requires vulnerability. If you can't show your pain, you can't let anyone in deep enough to truly know you. Your relationships remain surface level, and you wonder why you feel so alone, even when surrounded by people. You have acquaintances, you don't have soul connections. A person who buries fear becomes controlling. They try to manage everything and everyone around them, so the buried fear never has a chance to surface. They suffocate the people closest to them. They mistake domination for love. They push away the very connection they desperately want. Do you see the pattern? The emotions you refuse to face don't stay contained. They leak into your choices, your relationships, and your entire life direction. And the cruelest part is you often can't see it happening. You think you're protecting yourself, but you're actually building a prison. So why do we keep repressing if it's so destructive? The answer is simple: fear. Fear of being judged, fear of being rejected, fear of discovering truths about ourselves we're not ready to face. Repression feels safe because it maintains the illusion of control, but the shield becomes the cage, the armor becomes the weight. And here's what nobody talks about: repressed emotions are inherited. Studies on generational trauma show that emotional patterns pass from parents to children, sometimes through behavior, sometimes through biology itself. The emotions your parents couldn't process shaped how they raised you. The emotions you can't process will shape how you raise your children. This is why so many people feel stuck in family patterns they don't understand. It's not just about what happened to you. It's about what was never processed by the generations before you. You have a choice: you can pass down the pattern, or you can break it. If you're watching this and realizing you're choosing to end this cycle here, type cycle breaker in the comments. I want to see how many of us are making this decision right now. Whether you're in the United States, Canada, Australia, England, or anywhere else in the world, let me know you're part of this. Now let's discuss how to actually break free. Because awareness without action changes nothing. It starts with a simple but radical practice: honesty with yourself. Not a dramatic confession, not spilling everything to everyone. Just a quiet acknowledgement. Ask yourself, what am I really feeling beneath the surface? Not what I tell others, not what I convince myself of, but what's actually there. And this is crucial. Don't judge what you find. Anger doesn't make you bad. Sadness doesn't make you weak. Fear doesn't make you broken. These emotions make you human. They're messengers carrying information about your deepest needs. The moment you stop fighting yourself, energy returns. The moment you stop pretending, clarity emerges. The moment you stop hiding, connection becomes possible. From there, small practices can rewire your brain. Journaling what you feel instead of burying it. Talking to someone you trust instead of isolating. Pausing when you feel tension and asking yourself, what emotion is this and what does it need? You might try the naming practice. When you feel something uncomfortable, pause and label it specifically. Not only do I feel bad, but I also feel disappointed because my expectations weren't met. Or I feel anxious because I'm uncertain about the outcome. Precision creates distance. Distance creates choice. Another powerful technique is the 90-second rule. When an emotion arises, set a mental timer. Allow yourself to fully feel it for 90 seconds without trying to fix it, explain it, or push it away. Just experience it. Most of the time, the intensity will naturally decrease. You'll realize emotions are visitors, not residents. They pass through when you let them. These sound simple, however. Neuroscience reveals that they physically alter pathways in your brain. You're training your nervous system to process emotions instead of storing them. Each time you practice, your capacity for resilience grows. You develop what psychologists call flexible strength, not the brittle strength of repression that shatters under pressure, but the adaptive strength that bends without breaking. And here's the deeper truth. You're not just healing, you're reparenting yourself. Since your original caregivers may not have provided the emotional safety you needed, you're learning to become your own source of validation. You're giving yourself the acceptance that was missing. You're saying to your inner child what no one said back then. It's okay to feel, I'm here, you're safe now. This is reparenting, and it's not a weakness. It's the most courageous act of self-love you can perform. Here's something that might change how you see everything. When you cut off painful emotions, you don't just eliminate pain. You diminish your entire emotional range. Block sadness, and you also block joy. Repressing fear also numbs excitement, silence anger, and you silence passion too. Repression doesn't protect you from life. It disconnects you from it. You've felt this, that sense that life is passing you by, that you're watching everything from behind glass. That's not just feeling low, that's the cost of emotional avoidance. So the real question becomes this: do you want safety or aliveness? Because safety without aliveness is just survival. It exists without experiencing. It's being in the room, but never really being present. And aliveness, though messier, is where strength, love, and meaning actually live. Every moment of real connection, every breakthrough, every transformation came from someone willing to feel, willing to fail, willing to rise again. That kind of life requires you to face what you've buried, to sit with the uncomfortable, to say, I see you, to the parts of yourself you've been running from. And when you do, something shifts, the weight lifts, not because the emotions disappear, but because they finally flow through you instead of staying trapped inside. You realize you were never weak for feeling. You were only weak when you refused to feel. Perhaps you've been holding on to emotions for years that you've never allowed yourself to confront. Grief you pushed aside because there wasn't time. Anger you swallowed because it wasn't safe. Fear you denied because you had to be strong for others. Shame on you for burying it so deep that you forgot it was there. These emotions don't disappear because you ignore them. They live inside you, shaping your choices, coloring your perceptions, limiting your possibilities. They create invisible walls between you and the life you actually want. Maybe now is the moment, not to drown in those feelings. Do not let them control you, but to finally acknowledge them, to say, I see you, I hear you, I accept you. Because that's not weakness speaking. That's courage. That's the kind of strength that doesn't need to prove itself, because it comes from truth, not performance. And in that courage, you'll find a strength that doesn't crack under pressure, because it no longer has anything to hide. You'll find relationships that feel real, because you finally show up as yourself. You'll find energy you forgot you had because you're no longer fighting yourself every single day. This is the ultimate paradox of human psychology. The feelings we run from own us. The feelings we face free us. Remember this, what you repress today becomes the weight you carry tomorrow. But what you allow yourself to feel today becomes the freedom you live with tomorrow. The psychology of repressed emotions is not really about weakness or strength. It's about honesty, and the more honest you become with yourself, the more unshakable your strength becomes. Life will always test you, pain will always come. That's not optional. Loss, disappointment, fear, these are not bugs in the human experience. They're features, they're the price of being alive, of caring, of loving, of trying. But freedom belongs to those who dare to feel. You were never broken for having emotions. You were only breaking yourself by refusing to honor them. Every feeling you've ever had was trying to tell you something. Every emotion you buried was asking to be heard. Now you know the truth, what you do with it is up to you. You can close this video and go back to pretending. You can tell yourself you're fine when you're not. You can keep the walls up and wonder why life feels so empty. Or you can start today, one emotion at a time, one moment of honesty, one small act of courage. The door is open. The choice has always been yours.